Welcome to Mentor. I'm Marco Buzzozi.
And I'm Rachel Forde.
And today we have an incredible episode coming up. Our guest is the luminary that is Rak Patel. We talked about that transition for people who are maybe thinking about sales as a career. We got Rak's view of what real sales leadership is about, which I think will be useful to people who are considering the industry.
But before we get into that, we'd like to kind of have a bit of what's going on in the world right now. And from a media point of view and the fact that Rak is now at Channel 4 and we go into his career. But Channel 4 has always stood up as one of those, such a strong brand because, well, it's got a government remit and it has to, the programming has to reflect society, but it's always stood up for what's right. And in particular, it's just launched some research with the Centre for Social Justice. And it's a research program. It's all around Gen Z, but it's actually called Lost Boys. It's really focused on the boys, and it really gets into investigating the challenges and struggles faced by boys and young men in the UK in areas particularly like education. They're falling behind girls, employment, social mobility. And it kind of just really hones in on there's a problem, and we're hearing a lot of it.
It's interesting that just this topic is getting louder and louder and more evidence around it. I mean, Gareth... Richard Dimbleby lecture. And I thought, there was a lot in it. I'd recommend looking it up. But one of the things I really liked is he was really emphasising this importance of guiding young men towards positive values such as courage, humility, integrity, and advocating for role models who prioritise character over status, which is interesting coming from a top footballer. He also highlighted the need for supportive communities and mentors to help young men navigate societal pressures and develop resilience. So, I mean, I think for us, and maybe for the point of this whole podcast, is about mentorship, obviously, and advice. What he's saying there is, I think we all kind of need to look up a bit and see how we can help, not just in our industries, but in our personal lives and people around us, how we can help be mentors and be that guidance, because the father figure isn't always there for the boy in many situations.
Well, this report actually came up with it's a really scary stat that actually boys are twice as likely to own a smartphone than they are to have a father figure in the house. And I think when you go back to what Gareth Southgate is poking at, really is, in actual fact, when boys are going to the internet for their advice and role models, when you do get to the rights of the Andrew Tates, and there's way more than just him out there, there's all of these really dangerous, poisonous, toxic viewpoints on what masculinity is. And actually that viewpoint it's all about status and almost like dominating women, whereas Gareth Southgate is saying no, we have to fill the void, not let misogynistics fill that void, but actually try and tip the balance. And actually football, I mean, there's another thing, it's Borders, Football Without Borders actually works with disadvantaged children, and actually within that it's about the football coaches being those role models to boys and girls. But it's just really important, as you say, it's not just in the media world and social media world. How do we take that into society? So I think it's been a lot of talk about it over the past few months.
And there's some great organisations. I mean, just, the ones off the top of my head, like Brixton Finishing School and Speakers for Schools. There's things that for us in our industry we can get involved in that who are focused on, maybe less privileged schools and upbringing. So
media can be a force for good. Yeah, we can be a force for good. So without further ado, should we let Rak in?
Yeah, let's let him in.
Let's Rak in.
Today's guest is someone I've worked with for many years, and someone I think when you think about his attributes, commercial nous, great with culture, great with bringing teams along from the early days, EMAP and Microsoft, all the way through to running Spotify sales, and now very exciting new role in TV as Chief Commercial Officer of Channel 4. So Welcome, Rak. Welcome to Mentor.
What a wonderful introduction.
Rak is in the house. He is in the house. Apparently, now, since his Spotify days, he only, like a musician, you only come with like your first name.
Yeah, you're
Rak.
just Rak now.
So he's just Rak. He's just Rak.
Symbol.
No symbol. No, just
Rak.
Rak. But no, we're really, really chuffed to have you today.
That's so kind. And it's so kind to be invited. And, you both are probably the most showbiz couple in media as well. And the fact that you're doing this is just,
oh my God.
It's totally the right thing
You
to
saw
be
the hat
happening.
I wore today.
We are having fun.
We
We are having fun.
Completely right.
We are, when we were listening to some amazing
Thanks
stories.
for inviting me to the party.
Oh,
Love
listen,
it.
we are really, really delighted. And we try to do this at the beginning, and we try to keep it quite short. So we call it Your Career in 30 Seconds. But just to
60
give...
seconds.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
30 seconds. That's
Got me down already.
Sorry. Well, you did. Marco did say he's got a tendency to go on. So on half
Can
there.
do, yeah.
But just to give the listeners a bit of context to your background, would you just like to give us your career in 60 seconds, please, Rak?
26th of May, 1999 was the evening that United played Bayern Munich in the Champions League final.
I remember that. I was in Clapham
And
watching that.
I watched it in a pub not far from here, actually. And I had no idea what I wanted to do career-wise. I went to the bar, and there was a guy there called Stuart, who I went to university with. And I hadn't seen him for a few years, actually. And that was the first time I was seeing him. And I've not seen him since either. And we were stood at the bar, and he said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I've got no idea." He said, "You should do media sales." I said, "Why?" He goes, "Because you talk a lot." I was like, okay then.
Yeah.
Anyway, next day I went to Lipton Fleming. Do you remember that recruitment agency?
Yeah, totally.
And ended up getting an interview at EMAP the day after.
Oh, you start at the top.
Well, it was amazing, actually. So I started and I got the job. And I started at Drapers Record, selling classified ads at the back, 100 calls a day. Marco, you already touched on some of the other places I've sort of been. Spent a few years there. That was very formative in terms of London life more than anything else. Left there, went to the Financial Times, spent a couple of years there. John Slade was one of the group heads at the time, and now he's obviously CEO.
He's done well,
obviously the FT.
Great.
Brilliant time. 3 years, again, massively, everywhere I've been has been really formative in different ways. FT for a couple of years, left there, went to Microsoft. That's where my management and leadership journey really sort of started. Spent 7 years at Microsoft, employee 331946.
God, you can remember that.
I'm good on
It's
them.
still on his wrist.
Yeah.
It's still on his wrist.
It's still on the wrist. Yeah, exactly.
Got the chip.
That was brilliant. And then I joined the lead of Microsoft when I first went there, a guy called Chris Ward, and joined him at Autotrader, and then spent 4 years at Autotrader. That was a brilliant time, just in terms of leadership acceleration, those sort of things.
And Grand Prix.
And Grand Prix.
There
Barcelona.
was.
There was. That was good fun. Then 2 people close to my heart, Marco Buzzozi and Amanda, knocked on my door and said, "Come and have a little think about this role at Spotify." And that was brilliant. We spent a few years together, didn't we? And I ended up being at Spotify for 7 years. I don't think I was ever cool enough for Spotify, to be quite honest. But no, it was fantastic.
Definitely cooler than me, mate.
Oh, I don't know
That's not
about
hard,
that.
though,
I'm
is
not
it?
sure that's a hard.
That's not hard. That's not a
Wow.
compliment. That's not a compliment.
I might put that on LinkedIn. I don't know. I'll put it on there.
Cool, isn't it?
And then, as you said, I joined Channel 4 at the beginning of this year. So I spent 2 months there. That was longer than 60
Big
seconds.
move.
Do you know what? It's
you
great.
must have had a lot of reaction to that, I'm sure.
It was overwhelming. It really was.
And also, I think I remember joining Spotify, and there were all these other publications, I've never heard of them in my life, reporting about a move like that. You must have had, there must be that whole world of TV out there that everyone's reporting on that.
Yeah, no, totally. It was overwhelming, actually, the reaction from all quarters of the industry, so from people that I've known for years to, as you say, folk I've not come across before, and overwhelming in a way of, particularly because of the strength of the brand, and it means so much to the UK industry. Everyone has, there's something in everyone's DNA about Channel 4.
Absolutely.
So you had customers, agencies, clients, etc., coming to me saying, we'll help you and we'll support you. You have, as you say, other parts of the industry in terms of interest regarding, here's someone coming from Spotify to Channel 4, and I was blown away. I was actually blown away by the reaction in a positive way.
I think when you say, though, the brand, I don't think there are many media brands as strong as Channel 4, especially what it stands for. Like we at the beginning of the programme talked about a lot of the research that you do. I just think that's what everybody is drawn to, that actually in this media world of social media with so many bad kind of content, Channel 4 has always been like heralded as being the, you know, the top of really trying to, you know, help society, not just from its programming, but the research it does. So yeah, amazing. So look, yeah, that was.
And for me as a teenager, it was always the orange triangle or red triangle or whatever it was that.
What was that?
Well, in the early days of Channel 4, they used to denote the slightly more racy programmes.
Oh, and that's what you used to watch.
So as a teenager, that was how I worked out what to watch that night.
That's an insight now I've got about Marco.
Well, listen, the funny thing is we talk to people and time flies past and there's so much we could go into, but we end up sort of looking at the bigger sort of themes and things that are sort of overarching things. So I wanted to start with, and obviously having worked with you close as well, I know this, you've always championed diversity and inclusion. You're part of MIFA and I'm sure a number of other organisations. A sort of multi-part question, I guess, is, so first of all, sort of thinking about your time from right back to those EMAP days sort of through to today, as probably, fair to say, a minority when it comes to most media, not even leaders, I think probably in those days, sort of all the way through the pack, how you've navigated through your career and some of those experiences. And now, like, that, you know, you're running a big organisation like Channel 4, if you have advice, like what would be now, because we still reflect on surveys and things that are happening and the all-in census and all these things. Just, I wonder if you have sort of a wish list for other leaders of other organisations, you know, one thing they could all do in this space to help them.
Yeah, sure. Well, look, I definitely want to sort of start with the sort of beginning of the journey in terms of really trying to amplify what needs to happen and those sort of things. And I wouldn't say at all that it was with me from day one. It was actually as I went along my sort of journey where I had a light bulb moment and a bit of a realization that, you know, I have a voice here that can actually help, right? So what actually happened, and I remember it vividly, it was actually when I was at Auto Trader. So it was back in 2013 or 2014 or so. And I had a few sort of management roles. And then the Auto Trader role, as you know, was my sort of first senior exec role. And it was there, annual offsite up in Manchester, and I was up on stage in front of a couple of thousand people or so. And then that afternoon, 5 people came up to me and in their own way, I'd been presenting on stage, and in their own way said to me, it was great to see someone like me on stage.
Is it like to be it, you know, you've got to see it to be it.
Totally. And so that happened and I was like, oh, what? And it
You've
was
got responsibility.
Yeah, exactly that. And it's the first time I'd sort of seen that. I think prior to that, if I thought about, you know, equity and equality and the makeup of the team and all those things that are very important, I'd always look at performance or, you know, who's going to be able to sell and so on. And actually, if I look at some of the teams that I first ran, they would have been very similar to, every individual looking the same and playing the same role and all that sort of stuff. Anyway. So that evening, I remember just sort of really getting stressed out about what do I do, you know, because I'd had this sort of light bulb moment. And actually I rang Karen Blackett, good friend, Karen Blackett, good friend of you too as well, right? And I rang her and, you know, she'd already been so supportive around the sort of journey I'd been on. And I rang her and said, Karen, this just happened. What should I do? And she said, everything. And I said, yeah, but I feel awkward doing it. She goes, doesn't matter. If you don't do it, who's going to do it?
Yeah.
And it was so, you know, again, that was just such good advice at that point about, you know, it's not about stepping on eggshells or trying to think about the right route and all. It's just doing stuff and you know, and being a voice and those sort of things. And I wouldn't say that, you know, I could still do so much more. I really could. But it made me just think in the right way. And the right way being that, you know, I've had the privilege to get to these places in my career. How do I then make the most of that? And so like you sort of referenced there, being one of the founding members of MIFA with Naren and various others, that was really important. I remember the first dinner that we had when Naren called the sort of founding members, and we didn't know what we were creating at that time, but it was this dinner. And, you know, at that dinner with Sarah Jenkins and Nishma and Dino and, you know, and Dara and others, you know, there's about 8 or 9 of us, or maybe a bit more. And we wanted to save the world that evening. We really did, as many do, you know, when you sort of start these things off. You know, Naren's done an amazing job 6-7 years later. You look where that's at right now, and it's been incredible. But so, you know, so I feel very sort of, you know, responsible to do things. Now, in terms of what should leaders do now, and you know, I've worked now, and I work at an organisation where it's the air you breathe. Spotify, you know, it was the air that you sort of breathe, and they really sort of thought in that way. And I think that's the important bit. So my advice is, actually, I'm going to start with, you know, what we're sort of seeing right now, which is, you know, it being turned off, it being DEI. Right? And I think the problem we've had over the last couple of years is DEI became something you could put in a box. And because it's been in a box, it now means that organisations are either going cross or carry on, right? It shouldn't be that at all. And what I love about an organisation like Channel 4 is it's not in a box. It's not, you know, on the side. It's the way you are held responsible and accountable within your organisation. Now, for us at Channel 4, we have that remit. The remit's from the government, right? You know, in terms of the content we curate and the producers that we get that from and who we commission from. But that's my advice. It's got to be there that you breathe, and you can't, you know, the rollback thing.
Yeah,
is
but
just
what
ridiculous.
so that's true. And then it has to be, I guess, backed up and led from the front. And led from the
totally.
top. And, you know, to be fair, you're in your time, and I'm sure it carried on, but in the time that we worked together, like the change, it's clear how much change one person can make. Not a few people, but that team changed dramatically over those 4 years, and we, you know, showed that, as you say, with that focus and that desire for that change, you can make it happen.
Yeah. But look, you know, Mark, you held me accountable to that as well. So not only did I want to do it, but you as my boss at the time, it was the important, you know, way we wanted to have the shape of the team and the look of the team as well, right? So yeah, you're right. I've got to lead from the front on that, but also it's got to be within the organisation. Do you know what I mean? It's got to be within the organisation.
You've got to be supported.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is that when you say, you know, it shouldn't be a tick box exercise in the first place, or now you can actually, as you say, a cross box. You can have it or not, because all of the evidence points to diverse teams. You know, you were in a sales organisation, you still are. You know, diverse teams drive better sales results, and you know, so it is a shocking state of affairs that we are in at the moment, where it can just be seen as you say, something you can not do, because it just feels that it's an investment that's in the future of the business. But I think you are right, like Channel 4, because of your government remit, but also, you know, you want to reflect your viewers. You know, and that's the whole thing. Like in media and advertising and marketing, you know, we're speaking to consumers every day, and actually those consumers are, you know, it used to be like the London bubble, you know, and 8 London agencies, you know, a lot is done even to get agencies, you know, in the north is, you know, Manchester thriving, you know, Leeds, etc. Because we have a responsibility in marketing to reflect our audiences and customers. But yeah, some people don't really actually get that, do they? Can we just move on to your very varied career? You've been at a lot of places, and
well, thanks, Rachel.
And that's incredible.
Not too many.
That's incredible. That's incredible. But actually, but through those different roles, you know, there'll have been ups and downs. There'll have been. I mean, I'm trying to think about the
pandemic.
The economic downturns of 2008, of the pandemic. And actually, especially again in a sales organisation, that on economic uncertainty, and then tech disruption, and then maybe massive growth. What advice do you give to people about leading through uncertain times? What kind of anchors do you help them to I suppose, hold on to?
Well, the one sort of guarantee is you're going to have ups and downs. Right. So, how you manage through all those moments, all those times become really critical. And I suppose, you know, there are different muscles that you have to sort of, you know, rely on or lean in on. That was the Americanism there, Mark.
Lean in on.
Yeah. Oh. I know. All coming forward. I'm trying to get them all out. No, I am. But I think, you know, if that's the responsibility we have running any business. How can you adapt, and how can you ensure that what you're doing for your team, for the organization, for the business is still best in class? I think that's always the most critical thing. So, if I think about those sort of times of uncertainty, and by the way, I mean, we're in one, and it's unlikely that we're ever going to get out of it, to be quite honest, in some ways. So it's not it's not about a new normal. It's just about, that's what business is. So understanding which levers you need to pull at any given time, knowing that you've got a team that can sort of adapt and be agile to those sort of things, doing what's in front of you. That's really important, rather than thinking about what's not in your control.
I feel like everything I feel like it's since the pandemic, but it feels like everything's become a bit more short term. Like, it's very hard to have, we used to sit down and go, right, here's our 3-year plan.
Yeah.
This is what we're going to do, and that's going to happen. And then suddenly it's pandemic, Trump, whatever it is. That's quite hard for teams, because you can deal with it you can do the short-term things, but it's quite hard to hang on to the long-term strategy. And I know you always like to have that sort of longer-term strategy. It's finding that balance of the two.
Yeah, it is. I think you've hit the nail on the head. You've got to have both. I think you've got to have both. I think there's an and there rather than an or.
Yeah.
And I think if you look around and you look at businesses who are really successful, they are the ones that are doing the and. You can still have a long-term strategy and be able to evolve it through how you're operating and the results you're getting from a short-term perspective. So doing both becomes a sort of key piece to it. But within that, knowing which levers to pull, I think that's a really important thing. What I mean by that is, that's the essence of your team, or that's the essence of your product, or that's the essence of the industry you're in. Those are all the things that are sort of really key.
Well, I guess the best example of that was winning Sales Team of the Year in 2020 in the heart of the pandemic. First digital company to do that.
It was, yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
But we can't spend this whole podcast sort of talking about how, amazing and everything is and how smooth it's gone. So when you sort of look back, have you got sort of what you would class as your, as we call it, biggest fuck up? I think I put mess up in the notes for Rak, because I knew his PR team might get funny about it.
Yeah, we don't know any swear.
We don't swear.
What's your biggest mess up?
What's your biggest mess up, Rak?
Well, the first thing to say is there's loads. Come on, Marco. You know plenty. But there's loads. There really is. And actually, if I think about my career, the 26, 27 years, if I think about when I've been able to evolve most, it's been off the back of a mess up or a fuck up, right? I know, I've just done that for you, Marco. It really has. But that's life generally, right? Yeah. If you think about life as a whole, and again, this is well documented, this is nothing new. It's not a bed of roses every day at all. You are going from difficult situations and getting through it, and then you have these sort of moments which you feel that's a bit calmer, and so on, and then again it's a difficult situation. And same career wise. So if I think about the 20 odd years or so, I can actually sort of plot those mess ups and those sort of moments and what they've done for me, and how I've had to then sort of rethink or pivot or adapt. And the one that sort of stands out actually comes from from my upbringing, right? So I'm an only child, and we're from Manchester, as Rachel knows, not too far away from where you're from, right? Up in northwest Manchester. And what that meant was, because there wasn't a big Indian community in Manchester, we'd always be on the motorways going to Indian communities, family and so on, every weekend, right? So I would be mixing with folk in very short periods, which would mean that I'd have to sort of turn it on and all that sort of stuff, right? Now, what that then meant was that there were probably quite a different set of shades of Rak, right? There's this shade of Rak for this, or that shade of Rak here, and so on and so forth, right? And chameleon, you could call it, or good for being a salesperson, and all those sort of adaptability and all those sort of things, right? Anyway, so that sort of played out. Started my career, started working, went to a few of those organisations, and what started to happen was I started to lead in the way that I thought I had to lead, rather than lead in who I was, right? Anyway, didn't really think anything of it until I got to Auto Trader, and I'd spent about a year and a half or so there. And so this is like 2014 or so. And my boss, Chris Ward, pulled me aside and he said, we've got a bit of a problem. And I said, what's that? And he goes, you. And I went, what's that then? And he goes, well, this feedback's come from your team about how you're really harsh to them.
Ooh.
Right? And I was like, okay. Now, the context here, or the subcontext here is that I led in a way which was quite old school sales director type of way, right? But what the team was seeing, thinking of those sort of different shades of Rak, was when I was with you, Rachel, as CEO of UM at the time, they'd see a very different version of me to the version of when I came into the office and so on. And again, it was another one of these moments where light bulb, oh my God.
She's gorgeous, Anne. She's lovely. But that, do you know what though? That is a real kind of self-awareness piece, isn't it?
But it was that, and do you know what? Do you know what, Rachel? Fair play to that amazing team at Auto Trader to sort of, give that feedback as well. And as Marco will know, I wanted to react instantly to that. And actually, the best bit of advice I had from Chris at the time was just take your time.
Yeah.
Start showing yourself properly and so on. And it really helped me, because what that then did was, you can still have all these different shades of yourself as an individual, but what's your true essence? What's the thing that sort of connects you there, so that you don't look like
the authenticity piece, isn't it? Because if you look like you want one place, which Rak are you? Yeah. Versus, no,
wrong.
I'm all of these.
Well, which Rak are you? Like maybe you were the one in the office and you just...
No, I think it's just you have to adapt to different situations. This is, I can completely see that, but it's... Yeah, I can.
Are you saying the outside Rak was the nice Rak, basically? That's the real
normal
Rak. Is that the normal Rak?
Well, I can see you had sales targets, you wanted your team to perform, and as you say, it's a bit that old-fashioned one. Anyway, you did just mention Manchester then, and I really wanted to find a way to get Manchester United into this podcast.
Why?
Well, because we talked about Gareth Southgate at the beginning, and actually his real call for, there's a real need for positive role models to show masculinity in a better way than the Andrew Tates of these worlds, and actually to show, the team spirit of Gareth Southgate putting his arm around, one of the players when they've missed a penalty. That is masculinity. I really just wanted to ask you, apart from Gareth Southgate, are there any other past or present Man United players that you would see as someone you wanted to go down to the pub with, or somebody you'd like to get some advice from, or just who would that be?
Players.
Yeah, it's got to be United
players. I've got to say the king, right? I'd love Eric. Right?
Yeah.
Simply because he was authentic to himself throughout, right? When you sort of look at him, that is what you see.
We've got a picture of him in our office.
Yeah.
Signed, actually. I'll have to show you that. He's so cool.
Totally. And he didn't need to adapt, didn't need to do anything. It was, and that's how he led. And it's a great question, by the way. But, sort of looking at him, and how he sort of just his presence. Yeah. You didn't adapt for anyone. What you see is what you get, and just pure class throughout. So yeah.
Although he did do a karate kick, didn't he, at one point?
Okay.
Did he?
Crystal Palace, 1995. Yeah.
But he's brilliant. And then he went on to become an actor.
Yeah.
Did he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Oh, and then he did
film.
Also a philosopher. When the seagulls follow the trawler.
Yeah, of course. All of that.
There's so much you need to know about Eric Cantona, Marco.
There was. Well,
even you would like.
I thought you were raising Man U, so I could talk about Liverpool.
I know, totally. But Rach, I love that you've got Man United into
Listen,
this.
if we have any
really have.
Liverpool supporters, that can be brought in. But no, this is all about Rak. So Rak, next question, Marco.
But also, just in that same theme, it's funny how certain things get picked up. So the first Grand Prix, one of the rookies on the first lap crashes out. Right, so disaster for him. And Lewis Hamilton's dad, he's crying in his helmet and all that. So Lewis comes up, gives him a big hug, whispering in his ear. And that got so much coverage because people just want to see a bit of decency and a bit of support and positivity. And I think that's really important. So I think that's, that makes a lot of sense. And I saw, it is a fine line because, especially in sales, you do have to support. You need to support the team, but you also need to keep the team focused on their goals. And there is a little bit of an art to that. So, in a sort of similar theme, one of the things when I remember joining And a lot of people in agencies would say, you know, what's it like going over to sales? You know, are they different, and so on? And I remember in the early days of I had a period of time when you weren't there. I can't remember how long it was, but
18 months.
When you joined, like quite a long time then. And, what the hell was I doing during that time? And I remember going into agency. There's one particular big Group M meeting, WPN, and it was all the trading leads. And I remember thinking at the time, well, I know everyone, give or take. And then we walked into this big round table. There's, 30 people in there. And I'm like, oh, shit, I only know Robin only. Like 2 And Rak's like, hi, Dave, how's the kids? Have you built your shed yet? And he went around this whole room and he knew everyone. And 2 things sort of struck me about that. One, I felt like, and that's just one example, but one, it felt like, you know, I was seeing professional salesperson for the first time in that particular organisation, and I wonder, like, you know, what is like, what to you is sales now? When you're, if we have some younger people who are sort of getting into it, or maybe some of these agency people who are thinking, you know, I wouldn't mind a change. What does that look? You know, what does that look like to you? And like that skill of whisper, you know, we used to go.
It's like Devil Wears Prada. Was it like that? Whispering.
We used to go to the room together and go, this is
his briefing notes.
Yeah, exactly.
But how do you think about sales and that sort of more professional side of it, if you like?
Well, I think where to start is how sales is seen in the UK is very different to sales, say, in the US. Let's start with that, right? Because in the US, it's seen as a true profession. And, you know, here it sometimes gets a bit of a wrong connotation because sales means, you know, car salesman or estate agent, those sort of things, right? And it's not. I think the key bit that I've really always enjoyed is it's all about the people. It really is. It's the connection that you get. And people on agency side are as good salespeople as people on the sales side as well. I mean, they're actively selling all the time. But at the heart of it is, to your point, you know, knowing what's going to make that person tick and understanding if what you have to represent can play a role in making that person tick. Simple as that. So if, you know, for me, being a bit Rain Man-like means that I do remember people's names, but I think that's important, and I think the sort of personable element becomes key, even if you are selling something very tech-driven or you know, or based in a product like that, because ultimately that individual will have choice. And so if you don't have that, you know, that sort of connection to be able to firstly understand them brilliantly well, to know exactly what is the problem that they are trying to solve for. And that's a bit cliched, but I think that's what it is absolutely about. So from day one, when it was whether it was with a planner buyer or, you know, when I was making those 100 calls at EMAP and so on, finding that, you know, common ground through what problem needs to be solved for that person in front of you. That's what it's about. And again, I think it it's something that's, you know, that I think for me, plays into what I'm about. But to answer your question there, in terms of if people want to come into sales, don't look at it in a way of, you know, it's a profession that's either alien to me or particularly below you, and those sort of things. It's the art of conversation. It's the art of getting to understand what makes someone else tick and enabling them to go and do something.
I think that really kind of gels with me, because I think, like you said, agencies are selling ideas and plans and creativity to clients all the time. But I think where you're saying is really understanding somebody on that human level, because there's a book that I read called The Trusted Advisor, and that is about how can you, number one, understand the problem, but actually almost like to feel that you're in that problem together.
Completely.
And that is understanding somebody on a human level and what they're going through and understanding. And also some of that is sharing a little bit of something that you know, something that could be quite personal to you as well. It's just, I think as you say, it's all about understanding humans, what makes them tick, what their challenges are, and how you can help solve that together. So there's Yeah, there's a lot in that.
I thought you were going to say update Salesforce regularly.
Well, the accountability is a very important thing, Marco Bertozzi, as you know. But look, Rachel, you've just hit the nail on the head. You know, it is about the sort of problem solving together piece, and then whatever you're representing can help to solve the problem. I think that's key, right?
Yeah.
So
it's not a sell, it's a solution.
Yeah, completely right. Now, what that doesn't mean is that everyone has to be gregarious or everyone has to be an extrovert and so on. It just, you know, I think what's important is that ability to listen, that ability to, you know, figure out what are those things that are going to be important to that person, and then answering that. And that's why our industry's thriving, I think, because of that.
And you know, that's come up in another podcast, that the most intelligent person in the room is not the one that says the most. It's the one that listens the most. And it's that's again, we keep saying we have to listen more in this podcast.
Well, I never am, because I talk a lot.
Well, do you know what? We all listen. Yeah. We're always learning, always trying to be better. One thing we do ask every week is about, like, what can we steal with pride? So have you seen someone, or is there something that we call it your magpie moment, where you thought, that's brilliant, I'm going to take that on and steal with pride?
I mean, I do want to sort of refer back to what Karen Blackett said to me on that one. That is the one that really sort of stands out for me in terms of, you know, a wholesale change to the way I'm thinking. You know, again, reminder there is, you know, around if I don't stand up and try and amplify equality and equity and representation and so on, who else will? Yeah. So that for me has always been important. What else?
And I guess that still is relevant today.
Completely, yeah, massively relevant
in their career.
Massively relevant. But from a magpie, I love the magpie analogy here, because, you know, what I think is important as you go through your journey is you work with brilliant people. You know, Marco Bertozzi. I've taken things from Marco Bertozzi and put into the.
I'll get
So have I.
No,
so
not just the
He's
midlife crisis.
He's amazing, despite what Angelina thinks about you.
Let's just keep going on this thing. How long have we got?
But, you know, from every leader I've had, from people that I work with, people in the teams.
You can't think of anything, by the way.
No.
About what?
You just
great things, magpie things.
Anything? No. Oh, from Marco.
do you want me to go there?
So you go through it? No.
Yeah, I'm now trying to think of one. Well, I'll think about one for the next podcast.
Yeah, next time.
What Marco's very good at. Are we going there?
Go on.
Yeah.
But go on.
Do it.
No, what I learned from you, Marco, was how to stand your ground.
Oh, well, I've
how
done
to
that
stand
too
your
much.
No, and I really mean that as well, you know. And I think, and there have been times, particularly with my sort of upbringing, my culture, all those sort of things, where you just want to sort of get by, right? And what I learned from Marco, as you probably saw, Rachel, when you were working with a publicist, there are these moments where you have to put a line in the sand, and I took that from you.
Yeah,
there you go.
Just thinking of best advice you had, and it can't be lovely Karen. Best advice you've had about your professional career, or how to handle yourself, or anything like that. Just what springs to mind that people could take away with them?
Well, those who have been in my team have probably heard me say this previously, because it really stands out. It was my time at Auto Trader, and it was one of those days. It'd been one of those days. It felt like nothing went for me that day, right? Whether it was around decisions from within the organisation, decisions outside the organisation, needing a bit of luck to put, you know, this piece in the jigsaw puzzle here, and nothing went my way, right? And I came home. Now, my wife is Smita, as you both know, 4 children. She's been
we haven't talked about that. Hold that down.
Yeah, from a single child, then to
made up for it.
Yeah,
well, Patel, right? And so, you know, she spent many a year at home in the harder job, which was bringing up the 4 children and so on, right? And so often, you know, because she doesn't work in advertising and marketing and so on, I wouldn't bring anything from work home. Anyway, that day was just a horrific day, right? So I came home, and we were in the kitchen about to have dinner, and I just let rip with everything that had happened. Right, this happened, and then this happened, and oh my God, went through the sort of list, and she sort of turned to me and went, just do what's in front of you. Just do the thing that's in front of you, and then set the table. Right. And again, it was one of these comments or moments where I was just like, you're absolutely right. Because of a lot of what I was very annoyed about or felt wasn't going my way wasn't in my control. And what Asmita was saying there was, do what's in your control, do what's in front of you, do the job that's in hand, right? And again, going back to actually what Rachel, the question you asked earlier on regarding, particularly in times of difficulty and so on, what I always say to the team is I give that advice. You can try and second guess, you can try and think about, what happens if this happens and then that happens, but you don't know where it's going to end up, and there is a job to be done that's in front of you. So that for me is something that actually I go back to when things start, spinning, or I'm thinking about, okay, well, we need to get here in 2 or 3 years and so on. There's still a job to be done, and what happens when you focus in on the job in front of you, more things start to come into your control. They really do. And so that for me is standout advice.
Yeah, and I think because it is frustrating, because things that are out of your control, you kind of just have to let that go a bit, just let it, because actually, as you say, and by taking control of the things you can, then from a mental health point of view, helps you. Then you're a bit more receptive to the job to be done. Completely versus you're trying to think about everything. Yeah. And you can't control it all. It's like,
it's
what's
a lot of energy as well.
It's energy.
So much energy expended on things totally right. Are out of your control. It's hard. I mean, it's easy to say, hard to do, but the more pressurized things get, the more you have to sort of lean back on that.
I think you're absolutely right. It's easy to say, it is hard to do. I think, I don't get it right every time. Similar probably for you both as well, but you train yourself, don't you?
Yeah.
I think that's what the years have helped me with, that, these moments will come. Absolutely. Sometimes day after day after day. Yeah. But, in those moments, you've got to get focused back into the team. And particularly, I'd say, coming out of COVID, those moments have happened more because of uncertainty, because of, performance, because of, what's happening around us, what organisations are having to go through, all those sort of things. And I found myself actually giving that advice more than probably any other form of advice to the teams I've run.
Good advice. And the sort of advice we love on Mentor.
We love this on Mentor. We do.
You are the best double act. So which double acts would you say you're most like?
Well, I said Richard and Judy to my 16-year-old, and she said, who are they? So I'm not them.
Ronan Kemp and Clarana, I'd say, from one show.
Yeah, brilliant. Listen,
can we go there?
We'll take that.
Is he bald?
I might go.
No, he's not.
Is he good looking? Okay, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Well, thank you, Rak.
Thank you very much. It's been
Rak is leaving the house.
Rak is now leaving the house.
What an honour it's been to be one of your guests.
Oh no, you've been brilliant.
All the best to the pair of you.
I'd say it's not you've not got a face for radio. What you've got is you've got a voice for radio. I could listen to Rak all day.
Oh,
you've got a great day.
Well, this is a video podcast, right?
Oh, well, it is, yes, somewhere. Yeah.
It's all about video now.
Oh well, of course, Channel 4. Of course it is. Well, yes. But you have an amazing voice, Rak. I could listen to you all day. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, Marco, we always like to finish on a final piece of advice from even more mentors in our world, from our book, If I Could Tell You Just One Thing by Richard Reed. And Marco, what have you chosen?
I've got a great one from Stephen Fry.
Stephen Fry.
And I think we're all guilty of doing this at some point. So let's see if it rings a bell. So Stephen's quote is this: "It is never right to look at someone successful and think, that person's got money, that person's got looks, that person's good at cricket. It's so easy for them. Chances are 90% of the time you're wrong. But even if it is somehow true, thinking that is a very self-destructive thing. It leads only to resentment, which is corrosive and destroys everything but itself." Yeah.
What would they say? Envy is the green-eyed monster.
Yeah.
Thinking, just put yourself in other people's shoes. It's rarely.
Everyone's going through something.
Everyone's got their own shit going on.
Yeah,
I think that is 100%. The thing. Yeah, but that's all we've got time for. But don't forget, we love to hear about your mentors and advice. So if you've got any for us, please do email us on hello@mentorpodcastsofficial.com.
Mentor is a Viral Tribe entertainment production. Don't forget to give us a follow on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify.
And join us next time for more pearls of wisdom from Mentor.
Thank you. Well, that's all we've got time for. Don't forget, we love to hear about your mentors and advice. So email hello@mentorpodcastsofficial.com. Mentor is a Viral Tribe production.
And don't forget to give us a follow on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. And join us next time for more pearls of wisdom from Mentor.